Hey, good day. Today I'd like to just show you some of the considerations and some of the techniques that are used to actually create a file that would give you some kind of image. And what do you start with? You have to start with some kind of file, some kind of picture, some kind of words, something like that. This something else. This is actually, it's sort of kind of weird against the computer, the screen there, the monitor, but it's actually cut on the back, a reverse image. That's also called a lithophane. So what do we use? I just in general will tell you that I use Paint program because it's very simple to use for some of the simple initial manipulation of the file, because usually I start with a picture, and I need to size it. I need to get the orientation correct, number of pixels that there aren't too many for the machine, and things like that. And it's easy to add text and things like that. I take that, I put it into the GIMP program, GIMP. It's a freeware thing. It does basically what Photoshop does. It can now also do what Paint does, but I find it easier to do a lot of what I do in Paint, and then I use GIMP for other stuff. And then after that, import it into the ipicture program, which is what comes with the Oliver CNC I use. And that generates a preview. You can actually look at it. I'll be showing you that. And it also then generates a text file, which is the computer file, the G code file. It's like an industrial, it's a simplified G code program. It doesn't contain many or any complicated commands, because the Oliver CNC just doesn't have the capability to interpret all sorts of fancy commands. Anyhow, I'm going to show you some more now. I'll show you some pictures next, some picture files and what can be done with them. Okay, some sample picture files. This is something here where you can see there is text and a couple pieces of clip art, and there's also are some ellipses drawn here. That whole layout was done with Paint. Just simply choose the font, import some clip art, 2 clip art pieces, move them around to where you want them to, and then the ellipses, I made 2 of them, and I purposely offset them, and I knew the size of my piece of wood to start with, so I set the aspect ratio. At this point, it didn't matter about setting the size, but the actual ratio, and I might have said, I'll make this up, I might have said 580 high by 1150 long, and I might have done that in pixels or whatever. And so I created that, and subsequent to that, you notice there is a little bit of rounding, and just a little bit of rounding. These aren't super crisp edges here that have been cut. I did that through a blurring technique in the secondary program, the GIMP program, and we'll learn more of that later. Here's something here. This is on a piece of pine. Pine is subject to a lot more splintering. And you notice I did a very generous, actually too much generous rounding of the edges. Generous. That's rolled quite a bit. Those letters are not super crisp. They've got a slope to them, like a draft angle. And that's what we got. There's one piece of clip art chosen right there. And there's the layout, the border. So that's all done with those 2 programs. Here's something else. This one was left more or less sharp, and then I colored in after it cut with a little bit of stain and wiped it off, and that's why you get the black highlights. And there's some clip art. Just position it around. I think I did the squiggles with the Paint program by freehand, and these I drew the Thunderbolt just with lines from the Paint program, and that was clip art, and that's standard text. Yeah. Hey, you can take clip art, something like this. Standard clip art, boom, after adding some details with Paint, a circle, a line, and a square, a border, I was able to make a file, and this is what it's done here. This is on some chipboard, some melamine coated chipboard, and that's why there's a little bit of tear out there, because it was the chipboard tears out. This was a sign from my mother-in-law's flower garden. You can take something like this, clip art. This is very nice, and you say, wow, that's good. I chose this because I wanted to be able to write something in here like, happy anniversary, sweetie pie, something like that. because black is high contrast to this. It does not interfere with that image. There would be no, when you route it out, there'd be no chance of interference or confusion about, well, where's the edge of this image? I mean, this is very clear. The only thing that we don't know about that, just looking at it, is color. How will the color be rendered? So in the GIMP part of the program, we actually turn it to black and white, and we go, that's very nicely shaded. The color is turned into nice shading. And this has not been blurred yet for cutting. In the end, I would blur it just a slight bit. I would want the fine detail, so I wouldn't blur it as much, but there you go. You can take a photo. Some photos of people work out fantastic, some do not. My wife has dark hair, and I had a picture of her and my daughter, who has blonde hair, at night at Disney World with a black pool of water behind them. My daughter with the blonde hair, her hair showed out. My wife, she had no hair. She just had this odd forehead and a misshapen head. You could not see her hair. Well, in this case, we have a nice professional background, professional photographer background. And it appears to be like there's going to be good contrast here. So we look in black and white, we say, yes, there is. And then we go, this worked out not too bad on this piece of maple. And this streak right here, by the way, is just because that's where the lamination in the wood is. This piece of wood happened to be a piece of maple from an old drawer front, and it had been laminated. This is something, it was just different effect, and it's just, this was actually a scrap thing. I just played with it to my boys on a roller coaster, and it's cut on a piece of plywood, and that's why, depending how deep it broke through, it broke through into different layers and gave different effects. So some of that coloring is enhanced or interfered with or enhanced by the coloring of the different layers of plywood. Okay, something here to consider here in this. There's good contrast, all the heads, even the gray, grayish, brown, whatever, they all stand out against the bright background. When I put the lettering in here, it's a color chosen, which is white, not gray, not black, but white looked better. It stood out over all the backgrounds. So that's a consideration there. Something else here. Here is taken from clip art or photo art. It actually was colored, so I went to grayscale on it, and you can see it's blurred a little bit. It's already been blurred just a little bit so that it won't splinter when you cut it, and it will ease pressure on the router. It won't be plunging suddenly as it processes. You notice also black bands I put at the end. When I processed this, my intent was that anything dark or black would be uncut, anything white would be plunged to the full depth. And so black, in effect, then at the end is uncut, because that was the intent. So why did I put black bands there? Because this is a repeating pattern. I took an existing pattern and I looked where it repeated, and that you'll see is an exact match to that. So I made this as a repeating pattern, and I ran this program several times on a 6.5 foot piece of, I guess it's a door jamb. And you can see, if I pick it out right, I think that's a match. That's a match. So I did about 4 of these 17-inch, 18-inch repeating patterns down that. And you can make something long. So it was cut individually, restart the program, index a piece of wood, boom, you know. So, okay, now let's actually open a file next. Okay, it's time to make a file. So we're going to start with paint right here. By default, we come up with some blank white sheet, but I have a file called Crest. There it is. Crest was defined on my previous project, and my intent here, I start out with an intent, and it's going to be that anything black or dark will be raised, untouched material. Anything that is white will be plunged in with the router. So white will be full depth in, black is released back out to full release. So any text in black or gray here, or any shade of gray, will end up being raised from the white background, which will be plunged into the material. So from this point here, I have something saved here. I go to paste, because on the clipboard I have a baseball. And this is public domain, so it's okay to use. You'll notice it has some color too, so later on the color will be changed to black and white. but we're going to put the baseball there because this is going to be a baseball trophy. I'm going to go to text, and I'm going to say, I don't know, I'm going to change the font so it fits a little better. We're just going to go Southside Champions. Boom. Okay, this is very simple. I could do better, but for right now, this will be just fine. So at this point, the way I'm planning it, also I have the orientation planned, because on the router, we have the narrow width here. This is going to be the x-axis, and this is going to be the y-axis. And this is Z or Z-axis will be in and out of the page. But I have it oriented this direction. If it was oriented the other way, let's just see here. I would have to like rotate. If it was this direction, I would be limited by the narrowest aspect of the machine, which is, I'm going to say wrong, but roughly 12 inches usable. I would only end up with something about 7 inches long. I go, no, I got a bigger piece of wood than that. So I'm going to rotate. I'm going to actually reverse the rotation. This way I can make it as wide as, you know, up to 12 inches or so that way, and then boom. I haven't actually determined the size that this is going to cut yet. This is just an aspect ratio. So if we did have to change aspect ratio, let's say I didn't like this, I'm going to save that for a second, just so I have it before I go messing around with it. Yeah, I guess that's saved. If I did want to change aspect ratio, I can do resize, and I get rid of maintain aspect ratio, and I could go to pixels, and let's say that currently is 480 by 600, and that's about enough pixels. Like I like to see 100 pixels an inch, roughly 80 to 100. Otherwise, it will start to show in the resolution of the router. It'll show in the image. But if you want to change something here and say, I want a more squarish piece, I'm going to go 600 by 600. Now it's going to stretch this image and distort it, so it looks kind of strange. The font might be off, and you might want to redo this. But for right now, I was happy with the original. So I'm just showing you that at this point, you established aspect ratio. So one thing here, I somehow ended up with that bar character there. I think I better take an eraser, and I'm going to erase that right there. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to save it, and we'll take this to the next program. Okay, now we're going to open GIMP. And my intent here is not to show you how to use GIMP, but just to show you what it is I do. And you could use whatever program you want. And these things are what I find useful or helpful. So right now I'm going to open a file and open recent, because I just had it open to play with before. Now we're going to look at colors. First thing I note is I've got to get rid of that red color. And I'm going to go, desaturate, color to gray. And you can set a whole bunch of things, how rapidly, it's sort of the profile of the gray, I believe, that how much gray do you want? And it's how aggressively do you want it to go gray, or do you want it to trend to the black? There's some things in terms of that. So we have baseball. It's actually got some gray on it. So what's going to happen when it cuts? White is going to be deep. Gray is going to be somewhere halfway between, and black, like the outline of the ball and the letters and the outside, black will be fully out as far. And that depends on a mechanical setup of your router, your initialization, the coordinates. So we've got that. Now, right now, that is sharp, and we want to soften it just a little bit so we have a little more gradual transition. It'll reduce burring on the final part, and it will also be easier on the machine, and I think it helps the eye. I think it just looks better. So we're going to go filters, filters, and blur. In this case, I like Gaussian blur. And blur just basically, you see it's looking a little fuzzy already. The default is at 1.5. I'm going to bump it all the way up. I'm going to see if I go up this far, I can't even see that ball. Can you see that ball? No, that's on this image. It's such a delicate little image, and that's not good. On some pictures, you can go up quite a bit. So oops, I move my mouse. That's 0.50. That's not much. I'm going to go to that. You might say that looks terrible, too much, but it's actually livable. It's actually not too bad. I'm looking especially here, how rounded will those edges be? So we're going to do that. I'm going to say OK. Now at this point, I'm going to go File, and I'm going to export as. And it's going to be a PNG file, which is basically, it's a picture file. And it's going to be crest. I'm going to say crest blur, just so I can keep track of it from the other one. And also, if I didn't like it, I could just go back to the original crest. So I can export, and where is it going to go? It's going to go into the same file folder as the other crest is. And yeah, we're going to export. So, okay, bingo. Okay, next step. We're discarding changes. There are actually a whole bunch of files. Like we could still save the project file and do further manipulations on this. All that we actually did was export a product of this that is not as editable. Let's put it that way. So I'm going to discard changes. Okay, next up, we're going to go to ipicture. Okay, now we're going to go to ipicture. On my computer, it's Windows 10. When I loaded it for Windows 10, and even back in Windows 7, I had it in such a way I have to right-click and run as administrator. Otherwise, I get an error. And that's just the way I do it, and I don't question it. Now, this is ipicture. I'm going to, some defaults come up, and that's sort of meaningless in a way. Oops, open image file. And it's going to go here. I'm going into my demo pics. They're open. Oops, you know what? That's the unblurred one and the colored one. It's still got color. So I'm going to redo that. I'm going to do this, the one that's crest blur. Bingo. Oh, there it is. That looks right. Now let's say what size is my actual piece of wood. I'll go measure my piece of wood, and I will say, hey, it happens to be 7.75. It's 3 3/4. Now, the aspect ratio is going to automatically update. Oh, my wood, 7.75 by 9.688. So roughly 9 3/4. A little over 9 5/8. My piece of wood can be bigger than that, but that's the size of the area that will be machined on that wood. So you usually leave a border because you need a border for clamping and things like that, but that's the actual image size. Notice I have inch. I could choose millimeter, but I'm going to choose inch because I just am comfortable with that. The actual curious thing is, regardless whether you choose inch or millimeters, the output in the G code in the actual text file that runs the machine is metric. It's millimeters. Depth. How deep do I want my maximum contrast, black to white? Right now it comes up with a default of 0.118. Now you could make your machine do 3/8 of an inch, but that's a whole lot of work for a spindle, especially if you've got the Oliver with the original weak little spindle. I've got a 1 horsepower trim router on, and even 3/8 for me, it's not so good. In pine, it's okay. You get maple, and you just feel bad for the router because it's really howling away. But I'm going to go here, a nice compromise, 0.31. That's 5/16 roughly. And when I set the router down to the material to zero it, I will put a piece of paper or cardstock underneath it and have it just a few thousandths of an inch off, so that actually what you will see in the wood may be 0.28 or something like that actually plunged into the wood, because so that black in this case is going to be in the air. Now, scan step. Each time I go back and back, I index this way in Y, and then I go across, index. How much do I index with each step? I found you can put some incredibly fine number, but it doesn't make all that much difference. If you 0.015 is still usually pretty good. You can go 0.012 or 0.010, but it'll just take a lot more time. Something I skipped over, very important, invert light dark area. The default is that black is deep. Black will go in 0.31 inches. But I told you I wanted black to be high and unmachined, so I'm going to go invert dark area. So that means that white will be plunged in 0.31. You notice what that means is there's a whole lot of machining here. All that white has got to remove to be a depth of 5/16 of an inch, even out here. Okay, so this actually option is going to be harder. It's going to be more work for the router. Tool type, 1/32 radius. It's basically a conical bit, very small tip, and that's basically all I use. Feed depth per cycle, that is, you could program it that if you had a very deep to go, let's say you said, I want to go 0.31 deep total, but I'm only going to go 0.2 per cycle maximum. It means it would go over it twice. And I never do that. And there were some issues about would it make a mismatch, and don't worry about it. Origin position, it means it will start up here. When you're looking at the machine, it'll be the far left corner. And that's, I like the best. If you're doing something, sometimes you will use the center position. And that's where it all determines where you're going to set your origin when you get out on the machine and actually have to set the 0 points. You always remember that, and I always do that. It's what I do. So I'm going to press preview, and we're going to have to wait for a few minutes. We got a thing here, click confirm to confirm. I will take a few minutes, please wait. Bingo, here it is. This is a preview. Now, if I tilt it, you can see the relief. Sometimes, depending on what you have, it's not very pronounced. Okay, yeah, I can even look at the backside here. Look, that way you can get a preview. This is what it would look like if I had chosen the invert the other way, where the letters were deep, cut in deeply, and that was, the border was cut in. Whereas on this side, we're actually leaving the letters and the black proud, and the baseball is slightly proud. You see, it's not very high compared to the rest there. So this is a good preview. If you can't see the detail and you want to see more, you can X this out and you can go and change, you can change that depth there just to some crazy depth, just so that you can see. But remember to put it back to what you want. So at this point, we just X that out. We say, I like that. I made no mistakes. And we're going to press convert, and we're going to wait. Okay. It took about 20 seconds. Right now, it wants to name the file and put it somewhere. So I'm going to back it up here, and we're going to name it something. And we'll just put here baseball crest .g, and it's going to actually, and I don't want to actually have that .g there because it's going to name it .g. If you did leave the .g there, it would name it baseball crest .g.g, which is not the proper file extension. So it's going to go back in here, my little demo pics file. So it's basically ready. So next up, I'm actually going to, it says it has been saved. Next up, we're going to open that text file, that .gee file, .g file, and I'm going to show you what's in it, so you have an inkling. Okay, I'm opening this file here. It's a text file. It just got opened with the text editor. You'll notice inside here, baseballcrest.gee. Anything with an apostrophe here is it hides a comment. It means that when the machine goes through to process it, anytime it sees a comma, it ignores that line. So this is for comments only. Okay, and what it shows is 0.381, and then some other numbers, 196, 245. Those are the extents in X and in Z in millimeters of the picture we're doing. And some of the other stuff, I'm not sure. I think 140, 843, I think that's the number of lines in this program, 140,000. It's quite extensive. If I just roll through, you go, oh, la-di-da-di-la-di-da. Whole bunch of them. Okay, we'll go back to the beginning. I may be wrong on that. G90, there's some initial codes. This is the G code programming. It's industrial programming language, and not all commands work on these machines. But G90 talks, this is setting coordinates. Set G0, reset all codes, reset X to 0, Y to 0, Z to 0. S30,000 M3. Basically, that's saying spindle speed 30,000, and which is just a max command. The spindle never went that fast. And M3, I believe, is clockwise. You could give it direction. And then it starts giving, and so on my machine, I've put a spindle router in there. It no longer, rather a conventional trim router I've mounted. Mine no longer accepts those commands. So I actually delete that line when I do my programs. So I'm going to delete that right now. But for you, if you've got a stock machine, you would not be touching that. One interesting thing is that's where you control the spindle speed. If you were to take that line down here and go down here and just say S15, 150, then you'd be going, at that point, suddenly your spindle will slow down to 150 RPM. You have a wreck when you did that. It wouldn't be cutting hardly. But you could do things like that. But you have no idea where in the image this is or what it's doing, and it wouldn't make sense to do anything like that. But that's what these commands are doing. Now here you'll see a series of commands, X, Z, X. So X is traversing across the work, and Z is going in. And every once in a while, you're going to see it does all its X and Z. So it's going across, going like this, and then it reverses, and it goes indexes Z. And we'll look for or indexes on Y. We'll look here for the first Y command. Somewhere here, buried in here, is a Y command. And you see, it's hard to tell. It's buried way down there. We'll do a control find for a Y. There's a Y, and it says Y minus 0.38 millimeters, which is equivalent of the 0.015 inch that I programmed for the step. So long and short is you do a whole bunch of stuff, X and Z, back and forth, then you get a Y command. So if you don't understand it, don't worry about it, but I just wanted you to understand that this whole thing goes through, and it goes across just like the old dot matrix printers, and then down, down, okay? So at this point, the only thing of interest is at the very end. See, there's a reset code, sort of G00, and M5 M is basically stop your spin. There's a stop your spindle, basically M30 and a program. I think I could have that wrong. I forget now. So that's what's in your program. Next, we go to, do you want to save the changes? Yeah, we're going to save. Okay, next up, we save this to a thumb drive, and we take it out to the machine.